Vince Hartnett with Penske Logistics after the annual CSCMP State of Logistics report. And Vince, what were the main things that we learned from the recession as far as supply chains go?
Well, I think first of all, the report I think was terrifically informative. What we learned is they not realize the depths of the cuts that took place in transportation and logistics spending. I mean, at a record low as a percent of GDP, that was the reduction of capacity, reduction of economic activity, and of course, a lot of rate competition. Those were the data that came out to us and that we learned from. But more important, I think, was the discussion that it provokes as to what do we do going forward. We know we face a lot of the traditional challenges of capacity in the area of highway transportation, driver shortages, environmental and regulatory issues, sustainability, safety. So we know we always have to deal with those, but this really, I think, focused all of us to saying, how do we create a different supply chain structure that's more agile, more flexible, really able to deal with future threats. So we looked at some of the best practices of the companies who did the best from a supply chain standpoint during the economic downturn, and I think we learned from them. We've certainly learned lessons of making sure that the integrity of the supply chain, risk management, sourcing strategies, all that comes together in a big picture. So in summary, the report gave us some good data to understand what really happened to diagnostics, and also provoked a discussion of some important issues that need to be put on the table for all of us involved in ensuring a safe and efficient supply chain.
What about some specific things such as transportation capacity? How concerned are you about that as the economy recovers?
At Penske Logistics, we're also very concerned about transportation capacity. I think some of us forget that just 3 years ago, before the economic downturn, what were we worried about? Capacity at the ports, congestion on the highways, where are our drivers going to come from? So we had a lot of concerns about capacity 3 years ago. Now, they all came out during the economic slowdown, and we stopped worrying about the price of oil, but they're all coming back at us if we sustain this recovery. So looking ahead from a capacity issue, I think it's important that each of us, one, focus on the areas that we're involved in. So we're concerned with making sure we keep and retain drivers, even though the demographics are changing, even though CSA 2010 will have some impact on that. We feel confident that as a third-party logistics provider, we can deal with our capacity issues, making sure we have trucks, trailers, drivers, warehouses, and cross-docks ready. What the conference did provoke today is discussion around the greater infrastructure. That is, all parts of the supply chain, be it rail, air, water, LTL trucking, on-highway trucking, private fleets. There has to be a national policy on infrastructure, because the capacity of the infrastructure in the end is going to be the limiting factor, not the capacity of how many ships we have or how many containers. So that discussion has to take place. It started today, and you heard a lot of energy around that. I think the industry is really learning how to focus on the area of greater national infrastructure spending and coordination of that, so we do have capacity to handle growth in the future.
What about the area of collaboration? Has there been any improvement in that as a result of this recession?
Well, at Penske Logistics, we saw that many of our customers, the ones who were most successful dealing with the recession, the very deep recession, were those who had already put in place a real collaborative environment. In terms of making sure your supply base was intact and making sure your shipping capacity was there, and making sure you're working with your downstream customers that are already involved in collaboration with their supply chain partners were the ones who dealt most successfully with the recession. So that's a lesson learned for all of us. Let's look and study those practices. But we heard from all manner of industry, whether it be the medical industry, the retail industry, from the rail, from the on-highway area, from the facilities area. The companies who collaborated did the best, and maybe some of that confrontation that we saw in the past was not necessary. So we're continuing at Penske Logistics to focus on collaboration. We brought on our engineers, our IT personnel, our finance people. We work with our customers in all areas of their functional organization to make sure we were efficient during the recession. I think that those are where we have the best results. So it's a good lesson learned. You can count on all of us working more collaboratively going forward.
Do you think that will continue in the broader industry as well?
You know, I believe that collaboration we'll continue. Penske is certainly committed to doing it. Now, we've said that before, and pressures come on us, past ways of doing business, pressure from our suppliers are going to be on us. So I think it's a commitment we have to work very hard to keep. But if you don't forget the lesson that the people who did best in an economic downturn in the toughest of times, in fact, who came out relatively well off, were those who had a collaborative environment. We don't want to forget that lesson, so we're committed to it at Penske.
Thank you.